Okay, we all think we know the story of the Great Library of Alexandria, right? A catastrophic fire, a world of knowledge lost forever. But what if I told you the greatest library in history wasn't destroyed by fire, but by something a lot slower and, frankly, a lot more familiar? Today, we're digging into the real story.
Just try to wrap your head around that. For centuries, this was the image of the library. It wasn't just a building stuffed with scrolls. It was this grand idea. A single place where every piece of knowledge from the entire known world could be gathered. It was the intellectual sun, and believe me, the ancient world revolved right around it.
So this all gets started way back in the 3rd century BC in Ptolemaic Egypt. And you gotta understand, the library wasn't some dusty, quiet archive. No, it was the main event, the centerpiece of a huge research institution called the Mauseon. Think of it like a massive university campus, a home for the world's best scholars, scientists, and poets to study, debate, and create. Their goal was just breathtakingly ambitious, to get a copy of every single scroll ever written.
And this is the story we all know. Or the one we think we know. A story of tragedy and flames. The image is just so powerful, isn't it? Roaring flames devouring centuries of wisdom in one single night. A loss so profound it supposedly plunged the world into a dark age.
Okay, so let's dive right into this, because as dramatic and compelling as that story is, it's not really the truth. The real story is, way more complex, and in a lot of ways, it's actually even more tragic.
This is the question that just changes everything. What if the library didn't die in some spectacular blaze of glory? What if its end was slower, quieter, and maybe something we should be a lot more worried about today?
So here's the absolute core of it. The myth is a single epic fire, but the reality? A slow, painful fading away. The library wasn't murdered, it was basically left to starve to death.
So the crucial thing to get here is that the end of the library wasn't an event. It was a process. A long, drawn-out decline that came from a whole series of blows over hundreds of years.
Let's walk through how this actually happened. Look, it starts in 48 BC. Julius Caesar's in town, there's a civil war, and a fire in the harbor does damage a warehouse with some scrolls. It caused damage, for sure, but it was nowhere near the final blow. The real damage, the stuff that mattered, came over centuries. We're talking persistent budget cuts that starved the library of resources, political purges that drove out its greatest minds, draining its brain trust. And eventually, after centuries of regional conflicts and just changing priorities, the library was seen as obsolete. Its fate was sealed by neglect, plain and simple, not by one big fire.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, because we can move on from how the library was lost to the absolutely tantalizing and kind of heartbreaking question of what exactly was lost with it.
The sheer scale of the loss is just staggering. Modern estimates say the collection held anywhere from 40,000 to maybe 400,000 scrolls. This wasn't just a building with books. This was a nearly complete snapshot of all human thought up to that point in history.
So what disappeared? We can only speculate, but the possibilities are incredible. Unique star charts that might have mapped the cosmos with forgotten precision. Medical texts that combined Greek and Egyptian knowledge. Complete works of philosophy and history that we only know from tiny fragments today. Maybe hundreds of lost plays from masters like Sophocles and Euripides. It really makes you wonder, how much of our own progress over the last 2,000 years was just us rediscovering things they already knew?
So what's the big takeaway here? The story of Alexandria is way more than just ancient history. It holds a really crucial lesson for us today. The real lesson isn't that knowledge is vulnerable to fire. It's that knowledge is vulnerable to indifference. It gets lost when we stop funding it, when we devalue intellectualism, when we let intolerance and politics purge our best minds, and when we simply stop caring.
And this leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling thought. In an age of digital archives and massive server farms, we might feel like our knowledge is secure. But the story of Alexandria forces us to ask, is our knowledge truly safe from budget cuts, political turmoil, and cultural neglect? The library wasn't destroyed in a day, and the threats to our own collective memory might be just as slow and just as silent.